early in the morning to go to the next panel, and on and on and on and on and on. So, moving on. And now we just have the main three here, the Tripredacus Council.
Tripredacus Council now in session.
These three have only ever gotten toys before as far removed as you can possibly get. Their toy forms looked like beasts for sure, but they were entirely not to show colors. But that was a whole animation story in and of itself, one that we won't get into tonight. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to go with my least impressed here. And that's not saying much because I still really, really like this. Let's start with Cicadacon first, because I know that my reactions are going to get better from there. First impressions are that I just love what they did with the wings here, because this is geometric and yet organic at the same time. This, of course, looks like the cicada that Cicadacon turned into when he had his original toy. And the deco here isn't directly curvy and organic, so it doesn't look blatant. And another thing is that these little bits here kind of look like the bug eyes, and then maybe this is like the bug proboscis. That's a fun word. Although the nose cone here feels a little tacky. This must be covered with paint. Interesting that they would do that they would take a piece of rubber plastic and cover that. That's usually not like the Fun Pub. Usually they would shy away from that and not touch it. Wait a minute, but what about Terrorsaur? Because old Terrorsaur over here, this is also paint on his nose cone. Interesting. And here is a comparison with Air Raid, so you can see what's up. I think this pops a lot more than Air Raid. And Air Raid is cool for being simple and being what he needs to be for being an aerial bot, of course. But this has so much more going on with it, and the silver is very, very lustrous to the eye. I mean, the gold does the same thing for Air Raid, but he doesn't have as much as Cicadacon has. Alright, so first things off the bat, I think this is proportionally the best mold choice for Cicadacon that they could have gone with, because he's very broad-shouldered, and the way that his robe kind of idea was supposed to come down around his chest, very, very smart. Of course, you have things like your silver paint here and how that dissonates with the fact that this is just regular unpainted gray plastic, but we know the reasons why that has to be there. It's unpaintable plastic for the function that it has to be, and it has to slide into something because that's the combiner bag. Honestly, to complain about it is picking for things to complain about. I really like how the silver wraps around on these fingers here. There's a subtle curve to the fingers that is very Beast Wars. I also like the fact that these intakes are that same silver with a darker gray tone here, just like Terrorsaur's were. The head is a wonderful choice for Cicadacon, because I always thought of this member of the general team to be kind of like an Indian chief, with that kind of posture, that kind of broad presence. So here he is with Air Raid. And first thing I want to say is be careful of your chipping, because I'm worried about these paint apps here. These are on the same spots as they are with Air Raid, and this one just, it went away so quickly with Air Raid. So just please be careful of that. Also, along here on the torso, this section has a lot of chipping along any of the corners. But then again, skydive. I kept on saying Air Raid. Damn it. Skydive. Skydive. Skydive.
Skydive.
Side by side, Cicadacon looks, like I said, more homogeneous, and his color scheme is less diverse than Skydive's is. Got it right. I actually find myself thinking that the gray probably should have been a little bit darker, because of the dramatic contrast that was in the lighting conditions. I mean, they tried to evoke that as much as they possibly could, but now that I see it in hand, I rather wish that it was a little bit darker, something along the lines of the black that Skydive is wearing right now. The only way you can make this better is to light it yourself, and that could very easily be done with these. And I'm sure that the silver plastic would play on the surfaces really well, and shoot, you could even build your own table and place them around your own table. Have that as a display piece. That'd probably be the best way to display these. Next, I really want to look at Ramhorn, because this guy, oh, yeah, this guy is interesting to me. It's interesting to see the drill bit here, because on all the promotional material, we had seen this drill placed over here on the backside, and this was reversed. So you can peg that under there like this, and then have this on the other side. Well, it rather shows his face a little bit, doesn't it? As for being a drill tank, I mean, if you're coming up to a solid wall, you're only going to punch a little hole in it. I mean, you're not going to effectively drive through a mountain with this. But maybe it's meant for attack. Honestly, when I look at this and the way where it slopes forward, I think of one of those jelly monsters from Majora's Mask. And the way it's just, like it's got something in it and it like slowly coming to get you with these little eyeballs on top. I don't know which method I prefer of which goes forward or backward. I mean, this is a square space here. I wonder if this even fits into this space as a backwards tank. No, it doesn't. Is this supposed to be with this behind it, as we've seen in all the promotional pictures, or is this supposed to be just like this? Because look, it even has like a diagonal cut right here, and that fits there. But then it also has a damn peg to be able to go the other direction, and it perfectly fits, just slots in right there. It's the perfect length for this. Is it to give you options? Is it to possibly differentiate Ramhorn from Nosecone when he's made from these same parts? Who knows? Who knows? It's all speculation at this point. Honestly, this gives me options, and I like options. As for the color scheme, can we talk about this already? Look at the silver rims here. This is gorgeous. I mean, even if you look on Brawl didn't have that kind of detail. I mean, obviously he's got a much tighter paint budget than a convention exclusive has, mind you. But, oh, it's just, it makes all that detail sing. I love that, yes. And then with all of these lightning strikes down the side there, that's colorful. That's creative. And then a little bit of piping up here and some red. This is choice. I think this might be my favorite of the generals. Let's transform him and see what he's got for us underneath. Ooh, I'm already seeing things I like. Oh dear. Oh, that's... Okay, I have mixed impressions about this. On the one hand, I really love these colors, and I love the way that this turned out. I think for him, I would put his shoulders lower than Brawl's, because he doesn't have that much of a need to have giant shoulders. I mean, after all, he's rather like a diplomat rather than a bruiser. I mean, the paint is just fantastic on this, and I really like that they put detail here, because I thought this was a really cool idea to have as a backpack without a cannon coming out of it. But I wouldn't do that for Brawl, because Brawl needs his cannon. So I'm glad that I now have a toy that can display this look for me. But the thing that I'm mixed about is this head has stress marks. I mean, in the transformation, what happens is this has to pass through this space, and if it's not done at the right time, if it catches on things there, then it causes stresses in the plastic, and now this... that's unfortunate. I need to make sure that I check in on that tomorrow, that I can get a replacement there. As for the fact that this is the Brawl mold and everyone happens to hate the Brawl mold, he doesn't suffer from this. Perhaps it may be the little bit of paint that was added under here. Who even knows why that would need to be under there, to be honest? Because this is on the underside of the vehicle mode. I mean, I love it. Let's be fair, I love it. But maybe that adds a little bit of a buffer to the tab there. I mean, my Brawl may have been lucky among most, but mine always had this sturdy kind of snap idea. So those are the only functional things that I find unfortunately dismal about this figure. But aside from that, would you look at the turbines there? Well, they may not be turbines, but whatever these are, they're techie. I like them. This whole paint scheme is tremendous, and of course, look at the waist region. It instantly popped out at me when I was transforming this, and the silver up here on the sides. It's almost like it's slimming down his torso instead of being round and bulky like Brawl's is. The same detail lines kind of help out his rear side. And here he is with Brawl. The silhouettes on these are surprisingly different, just from the difference of having a back cannon to not having a back cannon. And of course the head shape, that makes a huge difference as well. But these very much feel like a different tone of figure. I'm not sure what else to register about this, other than I love both of these. The Brawl mold, contrary to popular opinion, I find this to be my favorite mold of Combiner Wars. It's fun to play with, and I think that the way that it looks, it doesn't bother me because of what we got with Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron. The idea of a central waist bit and then two legs that could come up and were adjoined to the side. The anatomy there was its own kind of thing, and you can see that across the board from any of those designs, but I didn't mind it at all. I think Ramhorn is still probably my favorite general here. I'm going to see about that head, because that head worries me. And if yours doesn't have any stress on it, then be careful with it, because who knows what might happen there. And lastly, we're going to take a look at C-Clamp. C-Clamp is interesting for me, because I could have chosen to get the Scattershot mold, but I wanted to be surprised about this one in hand. And I love it. When I saw first pictures of this, I was really impressed because of what they could do with the paint scheme to make this look like a lobster. These are a little flimsy. I wonder if they're like that on the Scattershot mold. I mean, they're not going to break, but they just don't have much substance to them, you know? But it's cool to be able to experience this molding for the first time. This is smart with its parallels to a lobster, because these stripes on the side are a lot like lobster legs. And the paintwork here on the cockpit that comes down here along the sides of this, the bulb here is sculpted, and they just went along with it, but it works like lobster antenna. Fine. And this whole cannon up front, I mean, it may not even be a lobster thing, but painted in silver, this just looks fantastic. It looks diesel, and that's a good thing. If you want to, these might be like lobster claws. I mean, I've been trying to look for claws on this design, and those are the only things that I think might be parallel to it, if I'm honest. You could try and take the hands forward to be claws, maybe even try and distort them, but they're still the hands. There's very little getting around that. But I think one of my favorite bits of lobster stuff is the tail. This is totally a lobster tail. The whole fact that it's red and the shape of it, I feel like they knew this going in when they were choosing this mold. But it is essentially the same thing as Silverbolt. But in the vehicle mode, it's a reshell with the core being the same. The tail fins are redone, the wings are redone, the fuselage is redone. Up here with the nose cone sections, those are all different. But I rather enjoy thinking of this as Botcon tooling. I know it's not meant to be that way, but it's fun. I get to experience this and associate the memory of getting this toy with this kind of tooling. And for the last Botcon that there might ever be, I think it's just something that I maybe just for the sake of sentiment. Who knows? So there you get an idea of their comparative vehicle modes. This concerns me up here. When you talk about his transformation, right? The tabs with which the fuselage is supposed to peg into the wings are covered in paint. I mean, I just want to let those rest there and not tab them all the way in, and that's a shame. It's a damn shame. So, continuing on. Oh, that's lovely. I love these colors. Okay. Interesting. His head has to go in sideways because of how big it is. Oh, God. Optopotamus was right. That is one ugly mug. Would you look at that? I mean, appropriately so, but that's a face only a mother could love. It's almost like he's got like two fingers like going up his nose like that. Slash a Rocketeer with like a crazy 50s fin going on. It's neat. And it's interesting that they made a head that was so big that it couldn't be fit in the normal way, so it had to be turned in, and yet we have Ravage. This poor case over here. Sweet boy. But what I think what it does is it makes the head really proportionate to this body in much the same way as the other members of the Tripredacus Council are, where it would have been great if he was just a little bit smaller, because the proportions are kind of to scale there. But what's unfortunate is that if you're going to want to try and recreate the table scene and maybe even make a little bit of a table of your own, well, C-Clamp is just, he's taller than the rest of them. So what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to have him kneel down? I mean, he was rather squat in the show, and he had this cape thing that would come like up to there and meet the top of his head. So you could squat him down, but even then, still the majority of his body is too big. It's the beast of burden that comes with this idea of taking the Tripredacus Council and turning them into a Combiner Wars toy. Because, after all, one of them has to be the torso. If you tried to make them all limbs, then there would have to be a fourth limb. Who's going to be the fourth limb? Who's going to be the torso? This makes the most sense, because all 5 of these characters work for the same team. And those really make the best Botcon sets, when all of the characters are there together for the same reason. Not like 2012, when it was just like a bunch of here and a bunch of there, and let's throw this all in the mix, and then shatter glass for good measure. These guys are all part of the same team. Like, these guys are the same generals, and then of course the minions over there are their own separate force, but they're underlings to these guys. So, like I said, it's part of the beast of burden that you just have to get with this idea. I mean, maybe I could place him in the middle, but that wouldn't be show accurate. Or I could place these two on stands, but then that still has proportion problems. Who knows? Who cares? So here he is in comparison with Silverbolt. It's very much the same kind of aerial bot to Botcon set comparison that I said with Cicadacon. I like the diversity of colors here, but this seems very homogeneous and to a good point. I like the placement of the colors. I like the fact that he also promises a little bit of the combined mode with these new colors, and they're beautiful colors at that. Maybe I'm biased towards Tarantulas. Whereas with Silverbolt, they match with his chest plate, and they work so much for him as a figure. It seems odd that the rest of these generals have all this silver paint on their torsos. And then you have C-Clamp. And he's got the most bare gray plastic. I mean, he's definitely got some silver. It's there. It's there up on the top. It's there on the sides. It's in various places all over his vehicle mode. But could it be that these pieces of plastic are the same unpaintable kind of thing? I don't think so, because this feels very different to the touch than this does. And the same thing with Silverbolt. That doesn't feel like a problem. It doesn't feel like unpaintable plastic, and I'm not entirely sure why that didn't get paint. The only other reason I can think of is budget. Not to mention, this could have been molded in gray, and perhaps it was that this plastic up here was red, and they just had to paint what they could, and then what they couldn't just mold that. Maybe that might have been the case. I think that's what I'm going to put my money on. So, now that we have the Masters and the Minions, let's finally take a look at how this combined mode looks. Look, he's dripping plastic chippings. Where his robe used to be, and... why have you stopped? Why have you stopped recording automatically? With Slingshot. Nope. No, you don't. It's horrible. I must be tired. I mean... What was the last thing you saw?
This mold just like Scattershot was.
Fucking hell. God damn it. And now we transform Silverbolt for another time. And then we put him next to C-Clamp for the third time. 'Cause we weren't recording before on both devices. One and then the other and then both together. Let's all go around, and we're going, and it's like very late at night, and we gotta get up early in the morning to go to the next panel, and on and on and on and on and on. So,